Hello and welcome to the latest installment of PSG Talking. I'm your host, Ed, and on today's show, we're talking all about the latest PSG transfer rumors, and we're going to preview the Ligue 1 match against Saint-Etienne on Sunday. But before we get started, let me thank all of you out there who have subscribed to PSG Talk Extra Time here on Substack. We appreciate your support and hope you enjoy the content we've been putting out. And you can always suggest topics for us to discuss on this podcast by using the chat feature. All right, making his triumphant return to the pod is Ethan from PSG Fan Club Boise. Ethan, I haven't said this to you yet, so Happy New Year. How have things been on your end?
Hey, thanks, man. Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been good. It was a little nice. It was good and bad to have a break from PSG for a little bit, but given our nice little run of form that we've had lately, I've been having a good new. Those matches to end the season was a great way to end the year, and then as far as how my personal life's been, been good. Finally, I've been telling myself all these years that, all right, this will be the year that I get into winter sports here, because we get a good amount of snow up in the mountains, and I've never done it, and I finally got a ski pass, so
Ooh, okay.
I'm gonna ski and snowboard a couple times. I already went last week, but I'm gonna see which one of those if I really like one of them, but. Other than that, yeah, how's it been for you?
It's been pretty good. The mountains have gotten plenty of snow, but down here in
Yeah.
the valley, not as much. I am not a winter sports person. I like to go watch hockey. I'll go do that, but you will not see me on the bunny slopes or certainly not going down any giant mountains on skis or a snowboard. My knees can't take it, so I definitely won't be doing that for sure. Let's just get into it. I talked with earlier this week. I talked with Jonathan Johnson, who covers PSG, as you know, but he's also an Aston Villa fan. And so he raised Jhon Durán higher than Randall Colomwani and thinks that he could help PSG's scoring issues that we've seen in the first half of the season. There's been reports that Aston Villa maybe potentially is interested in Marco Asensio, and he could help facilitate the deal. I was just looking at some because this is coming like by the minute. And I was looking. The latest report from Ben Jacobs has that Aston Villa values Durán around 95 million euro, and PSG is looking more around 65 million. So you got a pretty good gap there. So, but maybe if you include a Marco Asensio or a Colomwani in there, something like that, you can agree to the transfer fee overall. So, with all that word salad being said, what is your take on this potential transfer?
Yeah, I I know that some people want us to bring in other strikers, higher profile guys than Gonzalo Ramos. My stance on him in the past year has not changed. I still think he can be a future, a great striker for this club in the future. But I'm also kind of in the boat that, not saying also as if these things are typically mutually exclusive because they're not, but I'm not a big fan of the false nine idea. I mean, I can't think of a top club in Europe that still uses that. I mean, Man City used to, and they kept falling short in big games. Then they finally, upgraded, got a great young striker in a, little known guy named Erling Haaland, and that
Yeah.
didn't, I've
They,
heard
they
he's.
they hated the false nine so much they went out and bought the best young striker in the world.
Yeah, and I heard he scored a couple of goals for them in the past few years, and I think they've won. They may have won a European trophy or not, but so I'm just not a big fan of the false nine project or the idea. I think it could work against a lot of these Liga teams that maybe don't have the fastest defenders, especially fastest center backs, but against any. I mean, if you just look at in the first half of the season, first kind of half of this season, I guess, when Marco Asensio was playing up top or in a false nine role in the Champions League, if you look at his stats in Ligue 1 versus the Champions League and playing that false nine role, vastly different. Ligue 1, he looked like, man, this guy might be the best, forward, quote unquote, in Ligue 1. And then in the Champions League, the guy has, not only does he not have any goals or assists, I don't think, but he's almost got no chances created even. So I just think, and when we put Kang-In in a similar position, we've seen fairly similar kind of numbers. A little better, but still not great. Not what you want out of your guy up top, given that you've got Barcola and Dembele on the wings who haven't been scoring in the Champions League, but they've been creating a good amount of chances. So I think if we want to succeed in the Champions League, it's got to be we got to have a true striker up top. And Durán is a guy that I really like. I don't know if he's been injured, but he hasn't actually played a lot of minutes for Aston Villa this season. But when he's played in the Champions League, he's scoring at a pretty crazy rate. I think he's got just 3 goals in 5 games. I don't even think he started all 5 of those. Pretty sure he
What's
only
crazy
started
also
3.
is like
So
he came from Chicago in the
yeah,
MLS,
he
which is
did.
pretty interesting too.
Yeah, and especially Chicago Fire, which have been in the
Yeah.
last 5 years probably the worst MLS club
Yes.
in
Yes.
the whole league. He came from so really impressive. His skill set, I like it. The concern is one of the big concerns is that valuation. They value him at 80 to 95 million. That is just crazy, given that I don't think he's better than Ramos right now. I mean, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't think he is. Well, if you give Gonzalo Ramos consistent minutes, I think he'd prove to probably be a better striker. So getting Ramos for 60 was a little bit of an overpay just because we really needed the position. Now we don't technically need a starting striker, we kind of need a guy for depth, or you can go the other way and say, we need to drop 100 million on like an elite one, but you're not going to have that kind of stuff happen in a January window typically. So it's a weird situation. I mean, for his valuation on sites like Transfermarkt and all that are 40 mil, but that he's going to, go for more than that in negotiations, especially because he just signed an extension in October. His deal runs through 2030.
Yeah.
Villa do not have to get rid of this guy if they don't want to. And so clearly, given that they've got him on, a deal on paper and he's going to be there a while, unless they sell him, they don't have to, hold back at all with PSG. It's not like the situation that we have with Napoli, where ADL, their president over there, played hardball with us in the summer. I've been jokingly calling him a prison warden the last couple months, and now he has these dudes who, he's going to have to give a big discount on to sell them, assuming they're not going to extend. So then it's not a situation like what we have with Napoli with Osimhen and Kvara. It's basically the opposite of that, where they don't have to do anything. They don't have. So I would love for a player like him to come in, and it'd be great competition at striker. He's really young. I think he's just 21.
Mhm.
Ramos is 23, by the way. And man, I mean, if this signing was affordable, I think I'd love it. But I just don't see it being affordable in the end. Even if we try and swap players with them,
Mhm.
because a guy like Asensio, you can really he's worth 20 million
Yeah.
max.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but I like the idea of a transfer like that. I just don't think Durán is going to be the one that we get.
Yeah,
So
the price is going to be a challenge for PSG. Depending, they're probably going to take a loss on Colomani, whether he goes in January or the permanent deals in the summer. So yeah, the cost is the big hurdle to get over here with this one. I also wonder, you have Gonzalo Ramos, and he's returned from his ankle injury. He's still not getting regular playing time, even though he scored in 4 matches in a row. He didn't. He didn't. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong. He didn't start against Monaco. So like
correct.
he's still not one of the first names on the squad sheet for Luis Enrique, and then it just goes to your false 9 point. You know, does Luis Enrique really want a center forward? Like where maybe this rumor's coming from left field, and maybe PSG aren't really going for Durán. It just seems odd. Like PSG have a young, really talented center forward already, but he still isn't a regular starter at this point. Now, on the flip side, maybe Luis Enrique and Luis Campos, they see something in Durán and they're saying Durán is head and shoulders above Gonzalo Ramos. He's the style center forward that we want. He would fit better. That's the only reason that you would make this. If you think Durán is better than Ramos, then you do the deal. If you think that if it's just for competition or it's just kind of a nice to have kind of player, it's too expensive. I wouldn't do it. It throws off the chemistry too much. So those two guys have to get this right. It's a lot of money, and they've already gotten it wrong with Colomwani, right? 95 million, and he's going to be gone in less than 2 full seasons. So you have to get this one right. So they have to do the scouting and everything else that goes into what they do when evaluating players. And if they think he is better than Gonzalo Ramos, then bring him in. They also might be thinking long term. If they don't think Gonzalo Ramos is quote unquote the guy for them that fits Luis Enrique's system, they could probably sell high on him. I think you mentioned 60 million for him. Maybe in the summer, do they entertain offers from the Premier League? Could they get 80, 90 for him? I don't think that's too far fetched. So maybe that's what they're thinking, but it doesn't really, right? It doesn't make sense to have Ramos and Durán both in here. They're both play the same position. They're both center forwards. They're both young. They're both talented. What is the point of that? Having two high level strikers like that at those transfer fees?
Yeah. If you're going to spend, anything more than like 50 million on a striker, then they got to be a guy that just gets a lot of minutes. And a little bit of a detour on this, but I often think back to just the timing with some of our signings recently. Like we signed Skriniar at the worst possible time, right when we changed managers. When Skriniar was going to come in and he thought he was going to be coaching alongside, coached by Galtier, and he probably would have worked pretty well in a Galtier system. But that deal was done in like May. The next month, Galtier is sacked. And then we bring in Luis Enrique, who's like the complete opposite kind of manager that a guy like Skriniar would want. Same kind of thing for Hugo Ekitike. Pretty well in the Bundesliga, and I get he's probably not the maybe not the craziest talent out there, but man, as a backup striker behind Ramos, Ekitike would have been such a great option, I think. And it was the timing of it all. Like he didn't get playing time, and then we had Mbappe, and you obviously can't bench Mbappe, and then we brought in other guys, Ramos and Colomwani, and then where's Ekitike gonna get minutes? And he's not gonna, so we let him go. So, but as far as like you were saying, yeah, having two phenomenal strikers, I feel like probably isn't the move. I mean, the only club that I can think of that pulled that off was Real Madrid with Ronaldo and Benzema, but even a lot of Real Madrid fans didn't rate Benzema for a long time, and obviously that ended up being not warranted. But if we had a guy like Ekitike still here, that I think that'd be great because we could have
Exactly.
he's a high level backup, and if he has a lot better of a week than the starting striker at times, then then the starter could get benched. But for the most part that the starter, the one you spent more money on, is going to be playing. But and I get that a lot of our fan base will say, well, Luis Enrique has said that he wants two guys competing at every position, and yeah, I get that. There is a truth to that, and it makes sense in some way, but. I mean, most of the starting positions on this team are pretty solidified. But situations that I kind of love that we have at the club is in the midfield. We've got four guys that can be quality midfielders if Fabian Ruiz has played in the correct role, but only three starting spots. So you always know one of those guys is going to be on the bench. That's going to push him to work harder in training to try and get that start the next time. And we've seen a lot of rotation in the midfield. Another spot that I think of is at goalkeeper. Donnaruma's clearly been like the guy, but he slipped for a bit, and Safonov played for 3 weeks, got most of the match for 3 weeks. And we've seen a little bit, it's only been a few games, we've seen a little bit better of a Donnarumma since then. Also at left winger between Doué and Barcola. Barcola has, big dip in form recently, and Doué's taken over. And I know Doué hasn't always played on the left, but he's basically played in place of Barcola, and that's the kind of healthy competition that you need. But I feel like having two strikers that you spent 60 million or more on both of them, probably not the wisest. I mean, we kind of just, again, the false nine thing kind of skewed this a bit, but we did that with Ramos and Colomwani, and well, I mean, if you ask me, the decisions to get both of those guys were made by completely different people. But
Yep.
um, but it could be an example for, hey, here's how you don't want to, complicate things for depth.
Well,
While
and then
yeah, what
to,
were we saying?
to yeah, to make matters even worse, let's just stay on this topic for a second because our writer over at PSGTalk.com, Eduardo, was messaging me. He's like, "Oh, the Newcastle fans are a little sensitive when it comes to Alexander Isak because he is a player who's been linked with a couple of different teams, Arsenal, Chelsea, I think even Barcelona." Um, they're rating him, I don't know, probably about 100 million euro, somewhere around there. But he's another traditional center forward that's been linked with a move to PSG, an even more expensive option, which I don't know if you want to touch on that, but it's kind of the same points we've been making. It just doesn't make sense to spend that kind of money to bring in a player of similar quality that you already have in Ramos and then basically saying, okay, you two fight it out and best man wins and we'll go with that. It seems an expensive way to go about building a team.
Yeah, and the tough thing about this conversation is that you'll get a different answer from every single person in our fan base because some people don't rate Gonzalo Ramos at all. Probably just because they look at they look at box scores and they see, oh, he has barely any goals and he's barely played. Well,
All he does is score. That's all he
yeah,
does.
no, I know, but they're thinking, well, he only has like 4 goals a season, but it's like, yeah, context matters. He's been hurt.
Yeah,
So you'll have some people in the fan base who think he's pretty good. You'll have some people in the fan base who thinks he's amazing. I'm kind of in that boat. I think he can be phenomenal for us. And then
yeah,
you'll have other people who think he's just not good at all. And yeah, so you ask 10 different fans on what we should do at striker and you'll probably get 8 or 9 different answers. So yeah, it's weird, but I mean, yeah, because there are a lot of people. They would, if you look at Isak's stats in the Premier League this year, I think he's got like 18 or 17 goal contributions in 18 games. So
mm.
you're thinking, oh, well, that guy in the Premier League, he's got to be better than Ramos. And you could say it's kind of like the, um, how do you even say the guy's name? The Swedish guy that's playing in Portugal, Victor
Oh,
Gyökeres. It's the guy for
Jokeres.
Sporting,
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know how to say his last name, but him or Osimhen, you're kind of looking at an Isak. Their profiles aren't the same, but you're looking at dudes who are like in their mid 20s. They're lighting up their certain league, but it's like, do we go with the $100 million guy that's 25, or do we roll with the 23-year-old guy who is clearly he's a not a raw talent, but I mean we've seen what Gonzalo Ramos can do. He's been on the end of he's had some sort of contribution in like all 5 of the last crucial goals that this club has scored in the last month.
yeah, yeah.
Even when he's not scoring, he's creating goal. I mean, you look at the goal in the Trophy de Champion game just last week.
Yep.
Oh, he didn't get the goal, but he pulled 2 defenders with him and
Yes.
made an absolute tap in for Dembele, who still almost missed the shot. And you're
He's done
thinking,
nothing wrong. He's had no long spell where he's not
yeah,
being dangerous.
yeah,
I don't think he is like elite by any means. I don't think he's Erling Haaland, but I think he is very good and has more than earned a starting spot. He's certainly earned enough to not have the club looking for an Alexander Isak for 100 million. Like, what more does the guy do when he is put on the pitch? He either scores or he contributes in a meaningful way, or he's in a dangerous position. Like he hasn't really put a foot wrong since he's arrived, and it's not like he arrived for 5-10 million euro. Like, he was a pretty pricey transfer. Like, let's give this guy a chance. He's done well. I don't understand why
yeah,
we're already looking for competition for him. Like, we have the guy and we have a backup in Asensio, like, who's fine being a backup. So
yeah.
let's just roll with that. I don't understand why we're
No, I'm totally with you. And people look to, oh, well, look at his stats last season.
Mhm.
But you look at him and his partnership with Mbappe; those dudes should never play on the pitch together. It's a good thing that if they were both,
Yeah.
like if Gonzalo Ramos ended up being, if he ends up being world class, it's a good thing they're not national teammates. It's good that they're not both French or Portuguese because they don't work well together. And whenever Ramos was on the pitch with Mbappe, he was Mbappe was just like we saw with Mbappe at Real Madrid earlier in the year, which it's getting better. But you'd see him and Vinicius Jr. They're kind of getting each other's way, like a little bit on the left because they both wanted. Vinicius wants to drift inside, and Mbappe wants to drift outside, and they're kind of running into each other. That's kind of the thing you were seeing there, and that was exactly what was happening at PSG. So I feel like, I mean, if I've posted this stat a million times, but if you take Gonzalo Ramos' stats, per 90 minutes, so per every 90 minutes he's played, the man is averaging like 1.4 goals or assists per 90. And you could say, oh, well, he's done that in the Champions League. He's barely got a chance to play in the Champions League. I mean, I'm excited to see what's going to happen the next couple weeks and months. I hope he can get more starting opportunities. But one thing I will say, because I don't want to ramble on forever about this, but one thing I will say is that some folks say, well, does Luis Enrique rate having a striker, a true nine in there? And I was a bit surprised he didn't get the start against Monaco because that's essentially a cup final, even though we've sort of devalued the Trophy de Champions match over the years, but it's still a cup final. But if you look at that, outside of that, the Champions League games, he's got minutes basically he's got as many minutes as Luis Enrique can honestly give him. His first match back after months was against Bayern, didn't score, but he had 18 minutes. That was his return to action with us. He got the start against Salzburg. He scored the first goal, which ended up being the game-winning goal, and he got subbed off late when it was, 65th minute, 70th minute when it was still 1-0. Then we won 3-0. So I got to wonder, like, is he just saving him for the big matches? Or does he just want to play a false nine in Liga? It's hard to say. I think we'll know more by the end of this month.
Yeah, trying to get inside the head of Luis Enrique is very difficult. And I would say maybe a little bit more of an underrated part of the story with Gonzalo Ramos is the national team that he plays on, Portugal. And we look at Nuno Mendes is in the team. We look at João Neves. So we've got a nice Portuguese core. When they go to play for the national team, they're going to be playing together. They come to PSG. Like that cohesion matters. I really like, not that we have the whole PSG team needs to be Portugal internationals, but like I like that at all levels of the pitch we have players who are used to playing with each other in some way, and so I think that's only going to benefit PSG in the long run. We shouldn't be actively looking to upset him or unsettle him by bringing in Jhon Durán for 95 million euro.
Yeah, I'm with you. I say give him the rest of the season. If he gets consistent opportunities, if he gets 20 starts the rest of the season, and truly just kind of sucks, especially against big opponents in the Champions League, then yeah, you can look for someone else in the summer. But I mean, you look at what he's done when he's got playing time, and it's not like he's been scoring against the bottom feeders of the league. He has a lot of goals and a lot of great performances against Monaco and Lyon and Marseille in the last in his time here. So
All right, Ethan, we've got a lot of transfers to get through. Let's pick it up here and see if we can get to them all. I'm going to do my best not to butcher this name. Kavica Kvaratskhelia. That's a name that you may have heard last summer. The rumor has returned. Now it feels like this transfer of all the ones we're going to talk about, this one feels like it's the closest to potentially getting done. Napoli, for some reason, finally willing to sell. There's been a lot of kind of back and forth about this one as well, about what Napoli want. I've seen they're looking for a package of around 80 million euro. I saw a PSG report. If you don't follow them, make sure you do that. But basically, PSG kind of have two offers where it's Randall Colomani plus 45 million to Napoli, but Napoli they don't rate Colomani, they don't want him. The other offer would be 60 million plus Milan Skriniar, who does want to return to Serie A and I'm sure would welcome a move to Napoli, but Skriniar's wages are the issue for them, and so that's kind of holding up the deal. So I think Kvara does want to come to PSG. PSG want him. This is the second time they revisited this, so there's definitely something here. The two sides want to get this done, and now it's just kind of moving. Is it players? Is it transfer fee? What is it going to be? So I'm just going to go to you. Do you think that this deal finally gets done? And then we're going to talk about where he plays in a second. But what is your just overall thoughts on this transfer finally seemingly close?
yeah, I think Man, it's tough to say. I think that deal will. I think it will get done this winter. I think we do need to sell guys to be able to afford this deal, though. Skriniar and 60 million for him, I think that'd be the ideal case for me. Of course, Skriniar is making big money. He was expected to be, a marquee defender under Galtier when we signed him, and then obviously that kind of all backfired when we got Luis Enrique. But um, yeah, Skriniar apparently makes like 16 mil a year, something like that. So that could be a tough
Hmm.
ask for Napoli to get done. But I would love if that would happen. I think that I know some fans are kind of skeptical of Kvara's abilities and what he can do. And I'll be honest, I'm not super informed about him. But if you have a guy that Luis Campos, proven, talent recognizer, not that Kvara is like super young. I think he's 22 or 23. So it's not like he's a 17-year-old or something. But um, if Luis Campos wants a guy, you know that he's going to be really talented if he's put in the right conditions and circumstances. And if Luis Enrique also wants that guy, then that's a good sign. Those are the two football minds at the club. A little bit different philosophies, but if they both agree on a guy, then it's probably best if you go and get that done. Like I said, some people have kind of pointed out the hit or miss rate on wingers that are expensive, costing 80 mil or more. And I will say this, the numbers are not amazing for, wingers that have been bought for more than 80 mil or 80 mil or more. But if you have both of our football minds at the club that want him, I say you got to do it. So my one issue is that, well, two issues. I said Skriniar's salary is number one. Number two is I've talked about the financial side of PSG a lot, and that's something I am really interested in. I'm estimating, I could be off on this, but I'm estimating that PSG probably have 25 or 30 mil to spend before making any sales. So if they want to if they want to get Kvara, and they're going to spend 60 mil plus Skriniar for him. Even with Skriniar's wages off the books, you're going to give probably 10 mil at least to to Kvara, excuse me. I know that there were rumors a couple days ago that he was offered 8 mil a year gross, before taxes. I think it'd be higher than that because he'd kind of be a marquee signing, a big name signing. I think you're looking more at 12 mil, but long story short of this little spiel I'm going off on is even if you get Skriniar in the deal and you buy Kvara for 60 mil, you still got to sell someone else. So I think the deal might take longer than we expect if it gets done because I think Colm one he's going to have to go before we get this deal done. So which
Well, they also may be thinking, our old friend Xavi Simmons. Maybe they're counting in whatever that transfer fee will be in the summer.
you're talking PSG as far as the financial side?
Yeah, yeah. If
Yeah,
you're saying they may have to sell someone, but maybe they spend money they don't have, knowing that transfer will likely go through, and they'll get 80 to 100 million for him.
yeah. I have thought of that a little bit, but since I'm pretty sure that FF that my gosh, what's the term? It's not FFP. Yeah, it is FFP.
Yeah,
Why was I spacing on that? I was almost
financial
thinking
fair play.
LFP, which is French football. FFP, it works kind of on a year-to-year basis. So unless we could, yeah, it kind of would be spending money we don't have. But um, the logistics of that, I honestly don't know how that would work.
Mm.
Maybe if we sold Simons pretty early on in the window, and we could prove to FFP, hey, look, you know, this is sort of the plan.
Yeah.
Then maybe that would work. But my
I mean,
my
hey, come to an
estimation
agreement with
is,
Leipzig right now, if you can. Say, like, hey, you want to keep him? 80 million.
I don't think they'd spend 80 million on him, but
No.
but I do agree that we need to sell him at the in the summer. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I think to be safest, I would really, and again, I'm not in the, I'm not in these board meetings. I don't see the financial accounts, but I would be pretty hesitant to get this deal done. Say 60 million or 55, no, or 65 million plus Skriniar for Kvara. I would be pretty hesitant to get that done if we hadn't already sold, one other guy. At least get Asensio out of there is what I'm saying. So, yeah.
I wrote a piece over on PSG Talk Extra Time, sent it out on our X feed at PSG Talk, and kind of going through the pros and cons of potentially signing Kvaratskhelia. And as I went through, the pros definitely outweigh the cons, but there are some cons here. So just kind of some of the highlights, on the pro side, in 34 league appearances last season, he scored 11 goals and 8 assists. He's going to help with the issues PSG are having scoring goals. So that's number one. He's going to inject some excitement in the team. He's a big name, Liverpool, Chelsea. A lot of big clubs want him. If PSG can get him, I think that should excite the team that, hey, they're going to go for it. And while he can't play against City and Stuttgart, he likely would be able to play in the knockout phase should PSG get there. So it's kind of like, hey, if we can just qualify, we're going to get a big boost by this player coming into the team. So that could kind of energize the team as a whole. And also that he would be a Luis Enrique signing. And as kind of to your point, if the two guys that know everything about know about football, they're saying this is the guy, and they've now tried to sign him twice. Who am I to say that they don't know what they're doing? So if they want him, then I certainly back it, and I think he would be a good signing. Now, the cons, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is that he is a left winger, and we have Bradley Barcola, who likes to play there. And Barcola has already kind of had to bide his time with Mbappe last season and getting, substitution roles. And now he's finally into the team. And now they're bringing in Kvara, who's going to be in that same role. My concern is, where does Kvara play? Is he going to be the false nine? We've seen that doesn't really work. But then does Luis Enrique know something that I don't? Maybe he would be a great false nine. I don't know. So I'm just like, I posed the question to you. Where the hell is Kvara going to play? And is this going to stunt the growth of Barcola potentially?
Yeah, good question. I think he would play on the left, and you might see Barcola move a little bit. I would say this: a lot of people that I trust for tactical insight on social media, they've said, "Hey, let's not forget that Barcola looked probably at his best at Lyon when he played on the right." That a lot of people think that being on the right would better suit his skill set,
And
and
you have Dembele. So I guess the same question,
yeah,
like, are you going to just bench Dembele? Are you going to play him as a false nine? I don't
yeah,
love that either.
yeah, and you've also got Due to think about, and some people
Exactly.
would say King and Lee, but I think to me King and Lee is very clearly not a winger; he's a midfielder. But
We'll say
Due,
Kvara comes in. What does your front three look like?
yeah,
Or is
oh,
it you
it's
have a front four? Just what does your attack look like?
yeah, it's tough. I mean, you're gonna have at least one. You're gonna have one good guy sitting on the bench, which I posted a poll on my Twitter earlier today saying, "Hey, if we could only get Sala or Kvara, because the odds of getting both are next to nothing because of one, financial reasons, but two, more importantly, is that we would just have five wingers in the team, and you can only
I
start at
voted for
two. So
Kvara. I saw that poll.
you saw that, yeah, and
Yeah, I voted.
yeah, and so it's you can't get both, but I mean you would have guys that could play on the left. I mean Due can play on the left. Barcola and Kvara as well. On the right, I think Barcola can play on the right, as can Dembele. But then as far as dudes that can play false nine, you're probably looking at Barcola and Dembele could.
Mhm.
As far as anyone else, I'm honestly not educated enough on that, but it's a weird one. I know a lot of people are saying, let's get this deal done. Let's go to a 4-2-3-1. We're going to have two holding midfielders. I'm going to say if we go down to two midfielders when we've already got four, you got to sell one of those guys,
Fabian
probably
Ruiz.
Ruiz. Yep.
Yeah.
But then you're looking at, well, Vitinha's probably not best as a holding midfielder. So are you going to make him miss a lot of matches and play Warren and João Neves, which that'd probably, tactically speaking, be the way to go in a 4-2-3-1 probably.
Mhm.
So are we going to, who's going to lose minutes here unless we're just going to ditch playing with a striker, which then, Ramos would lose minutes, but we'd probably be looking at selling him. So it's hard to say. I don't know what they're going to do, but
I
gosh, I
do
mean,
wonder about Dembele.
yeah,
Luis Enrique benched him. He was
yeah,
late to training or something like that, and
yeah.
I do wonder with him if he's long for PSG or if he won't be moved on. He came in when Mbappe was here. Was he an Mbappe guy? We're seeing Colomwani likely being moved on. I
Mm,
wonder if Colomwani and Dembele at some point will be leaving the club in the very near future. And maybe Luis Enrique and Luis Campos are like, look, if we could get Gonzalo Ramos and Duran in the middle, then we've got Due and Barkla and Kvara and Kang-In Lee. That's a pretty damn good attack, and I think you could move them around a little bit, but you would probably have to move off of Colomwani and Dembele. Do you think that could be the long term plan? That
that
maybe in the summer
that
they get rid of
that
him.
could definitely be the long term plan. I know that Dembele has kind of said in interviews before he probably doesn't want to play football until he probably doesn't want to play past age. I think he said 33 or something, and I think he's like 28 now. He's going to turn 29 soon, something like that. Well, I think the whole point of it was that he probably doesn't have more than 3 or 4 more years playing at a high level professionally. According to him, I think him mentally, he wants to give it like 3, 4 more good years, then maybe do a year or two more at Saudi Arabia, get the bag, and then retire. That's what I'm expecting Dembele to do for his career.
Mhm.
So if
Yeah,
he if he starts to check out, especially once he hits 30, gets close to 30 pretty soon, if his speed starts to dwindle, then yeah, we'll need someone to replace him, and that's kind of why I really like the idea of having Mo Salah here in the summer. But if you have those two dudes at right wingers, neither of them are good long term options. So that's why I kind of get people not being so super pro Mohamed Salah to PSG,
yeah.
because then you're just going to have to sign another winger, a young guy, to take over in a couple of years. But yeah, that I think that it's just I think getting all that to happen would be tough. But I think if they did, that'd probably be best case scenario for the long term.
That's what I'm thinking. I think that is going to be the plan. I was just looking at Dembele's contract expires in 2028. So if you think it's 25 now, finish up this season, maybe next season you start entertaining some offers. You got a couple years left, or maybe like you said, Saudi. I don't know if there's any top European club that would want him, but um, I really like this collection of young talent that they're identifying. Kvara and Duran, in addition to the young players we already have, it's really exciting. So the future is exciting. Just got to figure out how it's all going to piece together. Um, Let me see. What other questions do I have for you? All right. So you touched on him, Mo Salah. I've talked to Jonathan Johnson of CBS Sports. I've talked to Robin Berner, who's a French football expert. And both of them, of course, just like everyone, Mo Salah, fantastic player. He's going to improve PSG, of course. But they really have a hard time seeing a world where he would leave Liverpool and everything that he's built there for PSG. Banner mentioned, Leo Messi came to PSG and maybe his reputation took a little bit of a hit there. It wasn't as successful as he would have hoped. And so I'm curious that what you would, you know, do you think that the pull of PSG can entice him to leave the Premier League for Lingon, and would he be a good fit? How do you see this shaping up?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to come. If he had the hunger to win a Champions League, there aren't. I mean, there are a lot of really great players that have won the Champions League at two different clubs, but nowadays I feel like that number is a lot smaller than it used to be. I feel like in the 90s you saw a lot of guys, a lot of great attackers moving between the Premier League and Serie A and maybe sometimes Spain a bit, and they'd win the Champions League multiple clubs. You don't get that as much anymore, I feel. If someone has a stat to correct me, then please let me know. But just from my gut tells me there hasn't been as many. But that could be another thing. I mean, winning the Champions League at two clubs is a big achievement, and he is sort of the face of football for a lot of people in a lot of countries. So,
He's leading Liverpool right now. He's playing out of his mind. I mean, Liverpool top of the table, 6 points clear of Arsenal, and
oh yeah,
uh,
if Ballon
I
d'Or
just
voting was today, he'd win it. I think so.
Is it Nottingham
Um,
Forest? Are they really in third place, or am I
they
looking at an
really
old
are in
table?
third. Isn't that wild? Yeah, they're
What
actually
is
third.
happening in the Premier League?
Yeah, it's weird. Man City's in like sixth or something, and Nottingham Forest is in third. Yeah, someone said, I don't know if I used to play a lot of Football Manager, and people said, this is kind of like when you get 20 years in the future and your Football Manager save gets kind of weird. You get Nottingham Forest doing really well, City is sucking, and they said, oh, and Man United's in a relegation battle. That's something you see in like a video game, like 20 years in the future. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, he could get the money if money's super big for him. Now we don't want guys coming here just for money, but he could get the bag here at PSG.
It's going to be between, PSG is going to be in the running, and then of course Saudi, and they could probably offer him more money, as that's just what they do. But to him, like you said, does it matter to him to win another Champions League? Does it matter to him to add another league? It's a top five league. It adds to his legacy. You won League on, add that to your trophy cabinet. I could see that coming to PSG would be more attractive. But also, in addition, I think with Ligue 1, they would probably be pushing PSG to sign Mo Salah. We know about the struggling TV rights deal. It's ongoing issues between all of the different partners, being sports and all that. If Mo Salah was to come to PSG, that's a name that you can sell around the world, and people may buy a subscription to see him play. Whereas they're probably not going to buy a subscription to see Jhon Durán.
Yeah, or even Kvara, honestly.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's tough. Although I will say, despite all these problems and despite all the conversations that fans have, the different opinions that fans have, it is not. It's great that we have options,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I'd rather have all these options and maybe we miss on some of them than kind of be in a situation where we just truly don't have options. It's hey, this is your best option. Who wants to come? Maybe he's not the best fit, but you just kind of have to deal with it. So,
It is pretty phenomenal, and I mentioned this
yeah,
in my piece with Kavara. It's what did we say? He's
I think he's
21,
23.
23,
Maybe
23 years old.
I think so. Yeah,
He's 23 years old. He's at the top of his game. He's got Premier League clubs that are after him, and where does he want to go? He wants PSG, or at least he's very interested in going there.
yeah,
And that the fact that that's still happening, given all the league issues, given all the jokes and memes out there, and being a top five league, and maybe PSG does win it every year, the fact that he wants to come here and play, I love that that's still happening. So something, to your point, to stay positive about. Let's see. We talked about how everything would come together. Why don't we turn our attention, as we're coming up on time here? Why don't we just turn our attentions to matters on the pitch? We've got a game on Sunday against Saint-Etienne at the Parc de France. We've got this is Timothy Chalamet, the actor. That's his favorite club. They are sitting near the bottom of the league on table. PSG, they've got, as you know, a comfortable lead at the top of the table. In theory, PSG should win this match comfortably. Saint Etienne probably going to play a low block. It's going to be a lot of passing around, trying to find that little sliver of space to wiggle into and get a shot on goal. But what for you? What are you looking for in this match? What are you going to keep an eye out for?
Well, I was going to jokingly say, well, we better see Gonzalo Ramos start, just because I think he can be the guy.
That was
But
going to be my thing. That's exactly what I was going to say.
yeah, I want to see him start, especially because our next match it is midweek, but we're playing a fifth tier side in the Coupe de France.
Actually,
Um,
Ethan, I was going to say this for later, but you've actually been called up to PSG. You're going to be playing that game because you should be able to beat them.
oh yeah, great. Okay,
Yeah.
that's exciting. I've typically played well at left back, so
There you go.
I
All
can
right,
I
the new Nuno Mendes.
oh okay. That's I'm more of a defensive left back, but
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
You whatever your skills, you should be able to beat this team.
Oh, that's funny. But maybe if I can get a photo with Nuno, then I would do it.
Get it while you can. We didn't talk about that, but his contract situation is kind of a problem.
Yeah. That was a weird one, but yeah, we can touch on that later in this one or in another episode. But yeah, given that we've got our next couple games, I think we've got Lens after the week after the Saint-Etienne game. But more importantly is that we've got Man City in about a week and a half ish, a little over a week and a half. I think that I want to see starters play in this upcoming game against Saint Etienne. Hey, here's a fun low block game for you to play, and then Hopefully they play again, next week. But I only want backups playing the cup match midweek. But whatever Luis Enrique can do to kind of get these guys geared up for Man City, because if I know that it's kind of been in the back of our minds with this big break between Champions League match days, match day 8 and 9, big gap in between them. But if we lose that game or we don't win, it's going to come down to probably us or Stuttgart are going to be the last ones getting in the knockout round, and we we're the team we play each other, so it'll kind of be like a one leg knockout game. But if we can win against Man City, I mean, we're going to be in a great spot. Maybe not even needing a win on the last match day. So I do want to see Ramos start. I want to see, I would even consider it's Saint-Etienne. So I kind of want Barcola to play there. We got to get his confidence back. I know he's played a little bit recently, but got to give him minutes. It's good to have both, him and Doué in form at the same time. Because of the low block, I would play Kang-In at right wing, even though I don't think he's a winger. It's just the fact that he's one of the better crossers on the team, and having a speedy winger isn't really important if the other team's gonna have a low block. So I would do that, and then
Yeah.
I would just kind of play a full strength side for the most part, but because I think the midfield and everything it's gonna work itself out just fine. I would probably play. I would play one of Neves or Warren.
Mhm.
Maybe not both. Ruiz. Well, I don't know. I think I would not play Ruiz in this game, but we'll need probably a holding midfielder back because I'm assuming Saint Etienne are going to try and counter on us, and it'd be good to have one guy who can break that up at least a little bit. But that's kind of what I'm looking for. Let's
Yeah.
try and cross well. Let's try and keep the. I mean, some games you see PSG start the game, and just from the get go, they're just not really technically there. Like passes are just a little off. First touches aren't great. Dribbling isn't really working. And you can kind of tell sometimes at the beginning of a game whether PSG are going to play well or not. And let's just try and keep guys healthy, rested, and match sharp because they're going to need to be on it against City in a couple weeks. That's kind of all that's on my mind. So
Yeah, all good points. Just looking at the Saint Etienne squad, not a whole lot of really fantastic quality. So there's no potential transfer targets or anything like that. So I think it's going to be at least on their side of the ball, like you said, maybe countering. They're going to sit back and low block. I'm wondering if I don't know if they'll start. Maybe they come in late. I wouldn't mind a cameo performance from Colomwani, maybe Skriniar, some of these players that you're looking to potentially move on, get them out there 25, 30 minutes, something like that. Like just put them out there. This is a team that they should score against. Asensio, maybe you put him out there and, maybe they get a goal or an assist or something like that. And maybe some of these teams, Aston Villa, Napoli, maybe they're like, all right, well, they seem to be in good form. Maybe, is this a match where maybe you play some of those players that could be moving on just to kind of show the teams that are kind of thinking about making a move what they can do.
yeah, that's a good point. It wouldn't be a bad idea, but you would hate for them to get hurt.
Yeah, you risk injury.
That's
Yeah,
pretty low risk. Not there's not very good odds that they would get hurt, but if I had to guess, I'm gonna guess Lucho won't do that. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they can get a little bit of minutes. But if I had to guess, I mean, I think Asensio and Colomwani and Skriniar, I think they all have a combined like 80 minutes in the last 2 months, kind of a thing. So
they probably won't be on the squad list, or at least if they are, they won't even be on the bench.
yeah, yeah. So
I It would be because I'm just looking when you look at the fixtures, like we were talking about. You have the amateur side on Wednesday, and then Lens away. That's a big game. It's gonna be a tough game. You're not gonna play them then, and then you get into the match against City. So I'm just looking at this Saint Etienne match. It's at home. It's against a low team in the league on table. So if you're going to do it, this is the time to do it. To give them 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just to get them a run out. Maybe they can get a goal. Who knows? And see what happens. So I'll be looking to see if any of those players that are in transfer talks, if any of them are mentioned. And I do wonder. He doesn't get a lot of conversation on this podcast and other places, but Seni Mayulu, I thought he played well last time he was out. I wouldn't mind if he got some minutes. I think he's earned it. I think he's a really good young player. Always like when I see him coming on the pitch, but it's tough. It's tough to get into this team, and that's what you want. But I would like to see him, the youngster, get some playing time. Maybe if not against Saint-Etienne, definitely against the other team on Wednesday in the Coupe de France.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, I'm with you. He's got to at least play that one. Yeah.
I also wonder about the goalkeeper situation too. If we'll see maybe Donnarumma play on Sunday, and then Arno Tenas, does he play on Wednesday? I'm just curious what Luis Enrique does with that.
Yeah, I bet he does swap him. I bet he doesn't play the same guy twice. But
Mm-hmm.
in which order is almost anyone's guess. Yeah.
Luis Enrique keeps us on our toes. Do you have a score prediction for Sunday?
I'm gonna go. I'll go 3-1 for us.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll go 2-0. It probably could be your score line. I'm just thinking it'll be really, really difficult to score with that low block. So I'll go 2-0 to PSG. Nothing too crazy, but comfortable win nonetheless. All right. Ethan, anything else on your end, or we should get out of here?
No, I think that's it. The next couple weeks are going to be exciting. It's arguably, not even arguably, I think these next 3.5 weeks are our most important of the whole season. So,
Yeah, we got January 22nd, PSG Man City, and then Stuttgart on the 29th away at Stuttgart. So we've got transfers, we've got pivotal Champions League matches, we've got amateur teams in the Coupe de France. So we've got a lot going on in January. We'll definitely have you back on probably here in the next week or so just to talk about more transfers. Hopefully some more so hopefully a deal can get done and we can talk more about that. So we'll definitely have you on soon. So thank you so much for coming on. Remember, you can follow Ethan on X. He's at PSG_Boise. All right. Thank you all for listening and subscribing as well. We really appreciate your support. We'll have a lot more on all things PSG. But until next time, bye for now.